Hello guys, welcome to another video. Hope you guys are all doing fine. And okay, so in today's video we will be taking a look at the FFuF tool, which is an enumeration tool that can be used to enumerate URLs, and this can be very helpful, especially when scanning websites, for example, for hidden URLs. But FFuF is so much powerful that it can be used for more than just scanning websites. It can also be used for enumerating any part of the URL, for example, like the headers can be also used to enumerate cookies, post data. Basically, any part of the URL can be enumerated using the FFuF tool, and this is very powerful. For example, when going through Ffvf challenges, when you are scanning a host to see what hidden URLs that it has, an admin /admin, for example, a hidden one, you can use FFuF tool to enumerate any part of the URL, unlike other tools, for example, the one that we saw in the previous video, their search, which can use to enumerate only the last part of the URL. And you have only certain configuration, like the you can add extensions and so on. But FFuF, you basically can enumerate any part of the URL, whether it be the query part, the in the middle, anywhere in the URL. So enough talking about the tool, and let's just take a look at it. So if you are using Kali Linux as I am, then FFuF probably should have come pre-installed with Kali Linux. So let's see FFuF -- help. Let's just see the help and see what does this FFuF tool gives us. So we have a lot of configurations and customizations that we can make. So we have, let's start with the HTTP options. You can supply additional headers to send along with the request using the -H. We have -X to specify the method to use when sending requests. We have -b to specify additional cookies with the request. -d if you are sending a post data to the server. We have also -u to specify the URL. We have -x if you are using a proxy for something, you can specify the proxy URL. If you are, for example, using FFuF and you want to proxy the requests through Burp Suite to see what FFuF is doing, you can also do that using the -x option. We have the general options. For example, we have the -c to colorize the output. And it's not the default, so you have, if you want to see output color in colors, you need to specify -c. Another one, we have -p. This is also can be very helpful in a lot of times, for example, what it does is you specify a delay between the requests. So between each request, for example, you specify that the FFuF must wait 1 second before sending the next request. And this is very helpful, especially if you're scanning, if you are, for example, in Ffvf challenges, maybe you're scanning a virtual machine. That's basically what most of the time it's basically a Docker container or a virtual machine, and you can crash those machines if you are sending a lot of requests, for example. So it can be very helpful to specify a delay so you don't crash the machine. Another one is the -t to specify the number of concurrent requests that are sent simultaneously, and the default is 40. This is also can also crash the machine if you are using so many concurrent requests. So minimizing the number of threads can also help prevent crashing the machine, or if you are scanning an actual host, then you can prevent causing a denial of service attack. We have -v to show a more verbose output. Now we have the matcher options. How do you know which request succeeded and which one failed, based on, for example, the return headers, the return status code, and so on. We have -m, -mc to match certain HTTP status codes that are returned from the server. You can also supply a string called all to match all status codes. By default, it matches those one listed here. Those are considered to be what we're looking for. If you are, for example, matching only the status codes that return 403, then you can specify only 403 and ignore all the others. You can also match by the line, by the number of lines in the response, by regex. You have HTTP size, response size. You can do all sorts of those matching using those options. And it's great that FFuF gives us all those options to specify. And we also have, as we have matcher options, we also have filter options. Matcher options, the ones that match the options that you supply will be the ones that FFuF shows you. But in the filter options, it will be the opposite. The one that matches the filter options will be filtered out and will not be shown in the result. So the same as matcher options, you can also filter by the status code, by the number of lines of regex, by the response size, and by the amount of words in the response. Okay, so for the input options, we can specify the most important one is the word list. And we'll see, so you supply a word list that FFuF will be used to enumerate through the words in that word list and inject them in the part of the URL, the request that you have specified using the fuzz keyword. Notice that with FFuF you can actually specify more than one part to inject the response to be, and we will be taking a look at that. You can also save the output. So if you supply the -o, you can specify the file name, and then you specify the output format. FFuF supports so many a lot of options of formats. You have the JSON, JSON, HTML, CSV, and others. You can also specify all to output all the formats. The default is JSON if you didn't specify. The most useful ones that I think I use mostly is the JSON. They do output a lot of details, and also the HTML. If you want to look at the result in the browser, it has a highlighting and coloring and all of that. And down here we have some examples of how to use FFuF. So you can use all of that. So using this tool, I have set up a local Flask web server, a lightweight web server. So I only scan my local host and don't show, because just following the guidelines of YouTube videos. So I'll just run my server. Okay, Python 3 .py. Okay, so now I have the server running on my localhost port 80. Okay, let's get this out of the way and let's see how we could run it. So FFuF, the first option we specify is the URL. So HTTP localhost, and then the fuzz keyword. This is the default keyword. And basically in the URL specifying which, where does FFuF will inject each word in the word list and try it. And in this case, I specified to add it to the end of the URL. And then we need to specify the word list. So it's in my user, share word lists derp/com.txt. Then we need to specify the file name, the output file name. So just say FFuF result.html output format HTML. Notice that even though I specify the output format to be HTML, when FFuF saves the result in the file, it does not add the extension to the end of the name. So you have to add it the .html so you can open it using the browser. I'm going to use the -c to output a colorized output, -v verbose, -t the number of threads, let's just say 2 threads, and -p to be 1 second. So -t the number of threads, concurrent threads 2, and -p to specify the number of delays between requests. I'm just doing this to prevent crashing the virtual machine. So let's just run the command and we'll see FFuF first outputs the configuration that we've used to run the command, and then it shows the progress of running. So we have 4,614 words, and if we took a look at the server, so we see that FFuF is actually sending requests to the server. Okay, so this is basically running slow because I've specified only 2 threads and 1 second between each request. Okay, this is going to take a while, so I'll let it run and I'll be back once it's done. Okay, so now that the results have come in, we see that FFuF has found a few URLs. We have the index URL, and we have the backup URL. You have /login as well. And you see for each result, we have the status that the server returned. For in case of the index, for example, it returned the status code of 200, and we have the size of 21 forwards, and also it also returns the number of line, and that for each result that FFuF has found. Okay, so remember that we also have saved. If we take a look at the command that we ran, we also saved the result into a file. So let's take a look at that file. So if we list the files, we see that FFuF result.html. Let me just open up my folders. Okay, open up the browser and let me open the results file and see how it looks. Okay, so very nice. So FFuF has FFuF report. So at the beginning we see the command that we ran, we see the time, and then we have the results. So it found 4 URLs. We have the /the index, the backup, and the login. And for each one it returns some other information. For example, the position. This is the number of the word in the word list. So this is the first word. This is the first. The backup is number 563 in the word list that we have specified. In this case, it's the common.txt. And it also returns the length of the response, the number of words in the response, the lines, the type of the response, and basically the same for every other result. So let's take a look at the backup, for example. This one you can just click right in here and it will take you right to the endpoint. So in case of the backup, it's basically just text saying this is a backup, so this is nothing. Okay, let's take a look at the login. And we see a login form. So remember at the beginning I said that using FFuF we can enumerate any part of the request. So, and this is basically what we will be doing in the next example. So FFuF can also be used to brute force a login, an HTML login form. So for example, if we try to log in with some, for example, admin login. Okay, so we see that the password is not valid. So let's just inspect the page and take a look at how the process of this response is going to the server. Okay, good. Right, let's open up the networks tab. I'm gonna choose just one thing. I'm gonna do preserve logs. Make sure that so when you refresh the page, the logs doesn't go away. So let me just refresh the page and okay, cancel. Let me just refresh the page. Okay, so we see a get request. We basically get in the login page, and the other one is just basically just Firefox trying to get the fav icon of this page. Okay, so let's make a request. So admin, then we do admin, enter. So the first step is obviously just examining how the interaction with the page is. So we make a post request to the server, and even though okay, so before saying Mate, what's interesting here is let me just take a look at what it sends. So it sends a post request to the so here's the request. Okay, so to the /login, and we have a content type. So this is the type of the content. This is very important to know. So the data that is sent to the server in the post request, is it a JSON in JSON format? So what data does the server expect? So we can send the exact same data. So in this case, it's expecting an application /x form URL encoded, and we will take a look at how does that look like. So if we take a look at the request, we see what the payload actually looks like. So we have the username equals the admin, so this is the value that we entered, and the ampersand password equals the admin. So this is the format that the server expects the data to be of this format. And the surprising thing to note is that even though the request has failed, meaning we have not specified the correct credentials, the server still returns a 200 response code, status code. So you have to take into account that when using FFuF and basically constructing your command. So now you can't differentiate between the successful request and the one that the one that failed. So we did not log in. So you can't use a status code because either way the server will return a 200 status code. So we need to use something else to differentiate between the response that has failed and the response that has succeeded. So, and one thing to note is that in the response, when we supply a wrong credentials, the server returns this message using, it says username or password invalid. So we are going to use this as a way to differentiate between the response that has succeeded and the one that failed. Okay, so let's take a look at how we could brute force this login form and get the right credentials. So let me just clear my screen, clear my screen and ls. So I have a folder here called WL. Those are just some basic word lists that I have specified. So let me see into word list, and in here I have two basic files. I have, let me just delete the result.html. This is the one that I ran earlier. So I have password and username. Let me cat usernames. So basically just a list of usernames, and the same for passwords. So just a list of passwords. So clear. Okay, so with that said, there is one more important thing to mention when using multiple word lists in a single FFuF command. So if we take a look at the FFuF -help, there is something called the mode. So if we take a look at the mode, it has multi-word list operation mode. Available modes, we have cluster bomb and pitchfork. So when you're using two word lists, there is the mode. You also need to specify the mode. How does FFuF work with multiple word lists? The default is cluster bomb. So let's take a look at this. So one is called pitchfork. So it takes basically two word lists. It involves two word lists, and we have, for example, the first word list is ABCD. The second word list is 1 2 3 4. And in this mode, what does FFuF it does is it basically just maps each element to its corresponding each element from the first word list with its corresponding element from the second word list. So we have A1, B2, C3, and D4. And this mode does not cover all the cases. So that's why there is another mode called the cluster bomb. And in the cluster bomb mode, given two lists, it will map all the possible combinations of all the words in both word lists. So basically it takes the first element in the first word list, maps it to each element in the second word list, and then only moves to the second element in the second word list. So that's covering all the cases. There are some pitfalls to each one. For example, in the first one we're not covering all the cases, but the process is a lot faster, and you can in some cases get the result using this mode. But the second one, it involves a lot of time. It takes time, but it does cover all the cases, and that's why it's the default when FFuF. So even if you didn't specify it, that's the default one when using multiple word lists. So with that said, let's construct the command that we will be using to brute force the username, the login form. So the command would be as follows. So FFuF, so -u, specify the URL. So localhost/login dash the first word list will be usernames.txt, and this will be injected in the marker user, uppercase user. And then we also need to specify the word lists for the password.txt. This will be injected in the pass. And as we examined, looking at the requests in the browser, we see that this is what the server is expecting the data to be, of the format of the data to be. And in this case, we'll just specify that it expects username, and we will specify user. So this is basically the same as the one we specified here in the usernames list. So FFuF will be injecting the words in this word list in this place. and the exact same thing for password as we specified pass. Okay, so this is what the server expects the data, the format of the data to be, but we also need to specify the type of the data, because when we examine the request, we also talked about this content type. So we've seen this content type. So it's also important to specify the content type. So when we do that using dash uppercase H, so basically we're specifying a header, and we just paste the clipboard, so content type. Okay, now is this return line or yes? So column, and then go back to the end, and we need to specify dash C to colorize the output, dash V to output verbose, dash O to save the results .html, and dash OF the output format to be HTML, then dash T the number of threads. So I'm just going to use 1 dash P 1 second delay between the requests, and that's basically just doing this so I don't crash my virtual machine and need to start it all over again. So it will take a time, but I'll cut the video and go back to the results. So I'll just run this command and we will see, since one important thing, the mode I haven't specified because I wanted to use the cluster bomb. In case you want to use pitchfork, you want to specify dash mode pitchfork. So just hit enter, and as we see, FFuF will start. So as you see, it will go through everyone, because I'll just stop and explain what this is doing. So basically, in FFuF perspective, a response that returns 200 is a valid response, but in our case, we know that the server returns 200 even when the credentials are incorrect. So we needed a way to differentiate between the successful response and the failed response. So we need to specify another option. So let me just bring back the command. We need to specify, just open up a new tab, http ffuf-help, and we see in the filter options -f regex. So this one, we want to filter the results that the response returned this message. So let me just copy this message, Control C, and then using the -fr we can filter that out from the results. So -fr equals, and then paste the clipboard. So we want to filter the response in which this text appears. So hit enter, and this will start. And we have 81 combinations, because in each word list we have 9 words. 9 words in the usernames word list, 9 words in the passwords word list. Since we're using the default cluster bomb, it will take the combination, all possible combinations, which is 81 possible combination. Okay, so I'm just gonna let this process go, and soon we get the results, we'll be back. Okay, so the process has finished, and FFuF has found a correct match. We have user David and password David123. So let's try those credentials and see what we get. So let me just close the div tools, FFuF David, and for the password it's David123. Enter, and sure, we are logged in. So this is basically how you would use it in a real scenario. You would solve NCTF challenges. You would use it to enumerate through the word list of usernames and password to get the right the right credentials for the user. Okay, so that's basically all I want to show you in this video. FFuF is a very powerful tool, and I want to make this video showing how we could use it and some use cases. So I hope you learned something from this video, and leave you with that, and have a nice day.